Walter Koenig, George Takei, Nichelle Nichols, James Doohan, DeForest Kelly, Leonard Nimoy, William Shatner, and of course Gene Roddenberry. We thank you. We salute you. This is the Review of Champions, and I'm your host, Grandmaster. With me is a powerful panel made up of the finest champions Sakar has to offer. Let me introduce them to you. First up, voice only, we have Mr. Lord Deathman. How are you this fine evening?
I am doing well. You can beam me right into this conversation.
And on camera, we have the original, Mr. Taylor First. How are you?
I am excellent.
That's good. This is episode 10 of the Star Trek Project, where we will be reviewing Star Trek, all of it in order of release, kinda. And today we'll talk about Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country, the last movie of the original series cast. But before we do, I want to ask you all to help us out. Like and share this video and subscribe to our channel. Join our forum at sakar.freeforums.net. You can find a link in the description below to register your account. Click it and become a champion yourself. We will set up our reviews, our episodes of the Star Trek Project when we deal with movies. The way we always do with our movie reviews, we do 3 rounds. Round 1 is quick thoughts. Round 2 is a deep dive and related things, and we round off in round 3 with a rating. So, my question to the panel today is: did the crew of the original series sign off on a high note? They literally signed off in the credits, but did they sign off on a high note? And I'm going to start with you, Mr. Lord Deathman. Quick thoughts on Star Trek 6: The Undiscovered Country.
Yeah, this is a high watermark for the franchise. This is one of the best pieces of content in all of Star Trek. And I always tell people Gene Roddenberry gave the tools that we needed, set up a platform to make it fairly easy to write a good Star Trek piece of content. Yeah, it's kind of hard. You have to be trying really, really hard to do bad Star Trek. That's just how strong the world is and the platform is and the framework is for the storytelling in this universe. But to make a great Star Trek piece of content, that takes skill, it takes talent, and that is exactly what was done here with the Undiscovered Country.
Taylor?
Well, just to follow up on that, if it's hard to screw up a Star Trek project, then the crew at Discovery must be the hardest working people in show business.
I can't disagree with you on that, man. They seem to be working exceptionally hard to make bad content, but that's another episode.
Thank you, Taylor, for
That is
teasing the
another episode.
Discovery review so much. I think we're going to get like at least 200 views for those.
Yeah.
But
All right.
anyway.
But this is a fantastic movie. It is just a perfect send off for the original series crew. Beautifully executed, beautifully directed. The acting is all great. Story is really compelling, and it does lead into the future, i.e., the next generation. So yeah, I have really no complaints.
Yeah, I totally agree. One beautiful thing, I think, is that this movie came out in 1991. The Klingons historically were like parallel to the Russians, the Soviets back then, and in 1991, well, the Cold War was as good as over as we know it. Especially if you lived through the 80s, you know it was over by then. So to make peace with the Klingons in that moment was actually perfect. I absolutely adore this movie. When I rewatched it like 2 weeks ago, I thought I was really entertained again, even though I've seen this movie many, many times. and I think it's yeah, I agree with Lord Deathman. It's one of the best pieces of Star Trek content out there, and I'm gonna ask that question later, but I think it's right up there with Wrath of Khan. But anyway, Taylor, if there is any criticism of this movie, I want to hear it now in your deep dive. And otherwise, I just want to hear you love this movie for a while.
I mean, I really don't have any criticism. I think the weakest part of the movie is the scenes where Kirk and Bones are in the Klingon prison. They're not bad by any means. It's kind of a fun side quest, and it's an important part of the story. I'm not saying they should cut it all out. I just think some of those scenes were a little bit weaker than all of the the rest of the movie. Little some of the humor there felt a little flat, but as far as the good stuff, I mean, like I said, it's just no stopping. And then, as you mentioned, I think officially the Soviet Union officially ended in December of 1991, and this movie came out just a few months earlier. Because of course the Soviet Union was falling apart for quite a while. So while this movie was being made, it was literally falling apart and imploding at the time. So and then of course that leads nothing new for Star Trek there, reflecting what's happening in the world. I thought it was really interesting how it happened that this moon of the Klingon homeworld had a power plant on it and exploded and caused a tremendous disaster that was going to destroy the whole home planet. Now, of course, we know from future parts of the franchise they find a new home planet. Good for them. And they give us a lot more stories with Klingons. But the whole all the political intrigue, the ramifications of this fact that the Klingon homeworld is dying, the forces on both sides in the Federation and in the Klingon Empire that are pulling in different directions, and the radicals that are going to extreme measures to shape the future how they think it needs to be shaped, including Kim Cattrall as the Vulcan, which was a big reveal of her actually turning out to be a villain. You don't expect a Vulcan to do that, but even a logical Vulcan can make bad choices and end up on the wrong side. And of course that hurt Spock quite a bit, because Spock was kind of seeing her as his protege. Again, all of this acting, all of these human moments, all this character development was all happening seamlessly as the plot unfolded throughout the movie. Christopher Plummer as Kang is just no, that wasn't his name, but I'm forgetting his name. But Christopher Plummer as the lead Klingon radical on his side was just fantastic. Christopher Plummer is such an amazing actor, and the way they put all the Shakespeare quotes into it. He, of course, is a Shakespearean actor, and so is William Shatner. So it was kind of cool how they managed to just sprinkle in a whole lot of Shakespearean quotes throughout the movie, which is something Star Trek, likes to do. They lean a lot on old literature, classic literature, in many ways. Again, the whole plot to defeat the peace process was really brilliantly executed. The mystery of trying to solve what actually happened, as well as getting Bones and Kirk out of the prison. I can say I just have nothing, nothing bad to say. It was all executed expertly by the directors and the writers and the actors. It was all just very compelling and just made for a great story.
Yeah, I totally agree. I absolutely loved it. Christopher Plummer, Captain Von Trapp, was Chang in this movie.
Yeah, General Chang.
General
Kang
Chang
was in the original series in Day of the Dove. That was
and DS9, but we will get to that later.
and DS9.
yeah. But no, a totally different character, of course, than Captain Von Trapp. Sound of Music, still a classic and one of the best movies ever made, in my opinion. But still,
Absolutely.
a musical, by the way, Lord Deathman. But that's another discussion.
It's true.
but no. To get Star Trek 6 was filled with major names and talent and stars. Taylor, you no doubtly spotted a few more than that. But Lord Deathman, do you have any criticism of this?
I'm afraid to say that I don't have a single criticism of the Undiscovered Country. a lot of people will point out that the special effects or the visual effects of the time, which I have to point out were cutting edge for the day.
Yeah.
Now that you might have like an 100-inch HD, 4K, whatever TV, those effects may not be playing as well as they used to. But if you look at this in the context of the day that it came out, these were really cutting edge anti-grav effects, playing around with liquid deformations and the scene with the blood during the assassination sequence. But dramatically, the small dramatic pieces in the conflicts that go on with the characters are played against this incredibly rich and original backdrop. Just to go into a little bit more detail with the plot, this movie opens up with, in a way that's so unexpected and so dynamic. We know that there's tensions between the Klingon Empire and Starfleet, that the Alpha Quadrant has really just kind of collapsed down to these two powers that are probably going to shape the future of the quadrant. All of the other powers have kind of fallen off as like side players. And at the time, Russia was so intensely and focused on building their war machine, as we know today, that they were cutting quarters, including feeding their citizenry, just allowing for their basic needs. They were putting it all into building warheads. And this gets paralleled excellently in that the Klingon war machine is so determined to win this war that they actually blow up one of the moons of their own home world, right? Sending Kronos into like an ecological disaster, and they want to just drop the curtain down on that. They don't want to ask for any help. They're like, look, we blew up a moon. It's okay, guys. Just go back the other way. We'll figure it out. But it just kind of says something about the intensity of Klingon warcraft, that this was how far they were willing to go. But then an opportunity opens up because of this, which allows these kind of peace negotiations to happen. And this is totally not where you think the movie would go, right? Like usually it's a Starfleet versus Klingon, good guys versus bad guys thing. But Nicholas Meyer and the team decide, let's go the other way. Let's push this movie and make it about an attempt to reconcile, an attempt to move towards peace, and the forces outside of that want to prevent that. And I thought, wow, this is not just good science fiction. It's not just good Star Trek. This is plain old good storytelling in terms of just being mature, but also really highly entertaining. This movie also rectifies a huge error of the previous movie, in which David Warner, an actor of incredible talent. He's done so many things. We could spend a whole episode talking about his career, but he was in the previous film and he was really underutilized in like a side, role, which
Yeah.
you should never do to David Warner. But in this, we make up for that with him playing. I think he's like the prime minister or the president, or like he's the lead figure of the Klingon Empire,
The
and
Chancellor.
the Chancellor. Thank you. He is the Chancellor. And what was his character's name? Could someone
I'm
cu-
Googling.
yes, please do a look up there. Because I think it's Gorkon, if I'm not mistaken. But Chancellor Gorkon is a great character. He's like the Abraham Lincoln of the Klingons, which I was like, am I really like rooting for Klingons here? Am I really rooting for this peace? The way the conspiracy unfolds, spoilers if you haven't seen the movie, just, stop the recording, go watch it. But this all turns out to be a conspiracy, not just between, Klingons that are trying to perpetuate this war and keep these two parties in conflict. This is a joint effort between Starfleet military, high ranking military, and Klingon military, who are deeply invested in seeing this conflict continue. They don't want peace, they don't trust each other, and they feel, I think it comes down to feeling like, hey, we're going to be obsolete if this war machine, turns into like peacetime. What is our role in this? So I think there's also insecurity on the part of the people who want to perpetuate war. But there's always people, even in real life, that that are invested in war, that want to keep people fighting each other. And again, I just think that this story is so insightful, so well done. The dialogue is beautiful. The dinner scenes, it's gold. They're talking about Hamlet and
Yeah.
reading it in the original
By
Klingon.
the by the
Yeah,
way, in that dinner scene, I thought it was the Starfleet officers that were misbehaving and not the
yeah,
Klingons.
and
And
not the
that was so
Klingons.
strong.
Right.
That was so strong in this movie. It showed the Klingons like in from a different light. I think Taylor pointed this out in one of the first episodes we did for the Star Trek project, where you can tell that hey, those Klingons, or was it Murph? Those Klingons actually have reasonable arguments against. The Federation about trade routes and everything that
Yeah.
Starfleet isn't clean, and they show that again in this movie, and I actually love that about this movie, that we're human, we're how evolved we are, how utopian our society is. We still have our
We
basic
still, yeah.
feelings, and we cannot control them all the time. And I thought that was very strong in this movie. Starfleet isn't always the good guy.
Not always, and I think that it's so three-dimensional the way that drama unfolds, because at this point Starfleet has been at war with the Klingons for decades, if not an entire century, and there's not anyone in the fleet that can't point to someone else who lost someone in the Klingon conflict, or themselves lost someone. So this enmity is going to be a natural thing that occurs organically. The hatred, not being able to get past the grudge and look forward to some peace. But you're absolutely right. It's the Starfleet officers who are usually the heroes of our story that turn out to be the most antagonistic and warlike during that dinner scene. At that point, you don't like they haven't revealed the whole card of who's behind the conspiracy yet. So it's kind of tense, kind of really heartbreaking in terms of hearing some of it. The cultural exchanges are great there. I don't have anything bad to say about this movie. I think it's wonderful storytelling. I
Mhm.
think it stands in at least in the top five of the franchise. And if you haven't seen it, you should go out and see it immediately.
Absolutely. Taylor, you had a follow.
Yeah, it was also revealed that the Romulans were part of the conspiracy, and I've always thought of them as the Chinese equivalent in this world of Star Trek, and it made sense for them to want the conflict between the Federation and the Klingons to continue as long as
Yeah.
possible.
Mhm. Yeah, because they can profit of it. They're scheming like Ferengi. Um, but one thing is uh, in this movie, which is a highlight for me, is the fact Kirk lost his son to the Klingons. You see that scene where he just looks at the picture and is contemplating what should I do, and but he actually rises above his own emotions and his own loss and his own grief, and he chooses to do the right thing and fight for peace, and which is actually a very strong message, certainly in nowadays society where people all too often choose their own needs above that of the many. Again, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. I really think that is great that they portray it in that way through Kirk in this movie. At least that's what I got out of it. Um, Taylor, any other highlights for you?
Yeah, I really love that Sulu is now commanding the Excelsior. They actually did push. There was a plan to actually make a series focused on Sulu and the Excelsior, a whole new series, but it just never came to fruition for whatever reason. But I think it would have been really awesome.
Yeah. Um, Lord Deathman, you had another follow up.
Taylor just stole my thunder. I was going to point out the Sulu thing as well. But since this is such an awesome movie, there's no shortage of things to praise it for. I wanted to say that a lot of people always look to the Christopher Plummer role, and he deserves every single bit of praise that he got for making General Chang such an entertaining and engaging character. But I always go to uh, the best dramatic performance for me in this movie, and the person who really shines just happens to be Bill Shatner. His Captain Kirk in this movie is one of my favorite depictions of the character. I think he did a really good job selling us on the feelings that he's wrestling with regarding his son's death at the hands of Klingons, that hatred. He doesn't oversell it, so you don't feel like it's out of character for a veteran Starfleet officer, but he doesn't undersell it either, so that you know that it's something that really affected him. So I always say that that's my favorite dramatic performance, and it more than made up for the chicanery that went on with the Final Frontier. This was like Shatner's apology to the fans. He was like, "Look, I can still do a good one for you. Here you go."
Taylor?
Shatner's performance was fantastic, especially, well, not especially, but throughout the whole movie. But one scene is when he and Spock are discussing it, and they're in disagreement, where Kirk wants to let them die, quote, let them die, and Spock doesn't. But what I love about the scene is they discuss it like professionals, like adults. They don't start
Yeah.
screaming at each other. They don't throw down in a fist fight, which seems to be the go-to on a lot of more modern movies and stuff. No, they act like they talk to each other like adults who are professionals and who respect each other. And it was just well executed.
Yeah. Let me take it back to Sulu real quick. And I do that in a different way than you may think. The final scene of the movie, they all walk onto the bridge of the Enterprise and they get called into space dock, basically to be decommissioned. And then they take the Enterprise on a rogue voyage for the last time. That famous line, second start to the right and then straight until morning. Love that. Never love that. And then they look into the camera and they say their goodbyes. Then you get all the signatures on the screen. Love it. The only thing I don't like that Sulu is missing. I understand why, story-wise, he's not there, but it would have been great if George Takei was in that scene as well. For some reason, they did not do that, and I think that's, if you talk about negatives about this movie, and I know it's a nitpick, but I think it's a flaw. They didn't do that in my book. What do you guys think? Lord, that's my first.
I don't think. Yeah, I want to call this movie flawless, but I have to acknowledge what you're saying. It does feel like a missed opportunity, especially since this ended up being the last movie in the series. So I do have to agree with you there. But I think over time, I don't know if I'm just rationalizing it, but I feel like since he was kind of like taking on his own career and going to be, a captain on another ship, and there might have even been plans to develop him into like a TV series or movie series. I've heard all kinds of, rumors. I don't know how true they are. Maybe they felt like maybe that sort of explained his absence, but now that you say it, and I have to kind of face it plainly, that could be considered one blemish on the film, one slight blemish.
Yeah, it's not a major thing, but I still think I regret that they didn't do it. But Taylor, what do you think about it?
Well, they probably felt that it was good enough that he was one of the few people in the entire history of Starfleet to ever actually get promoted. But they did try to give him his own little moment where they had him saying goodbye on the bridge of his ship with his crew behind him there. So they did try to give him his little moment, and it did fit the storyline. He was now commanding another ship, and as I said, and as Lord Deathman said, they did have plans to do more with that unfortunately didn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. One final thing I wanted to discuss before we go to our rating, but there's always this debate, especially if you're a little bit younger, like Lord Deathman and me, where you also grew up with the next generation movies, and there's this debate: which movie is better? Is it Wrath of Khan or First Contact? I'm going to ask you, which movie is better, Wrath of Khan or The Undiscovered Country? Taylor.
They're both 10s.
They're both 10s.
It's a tie.
It's a tie. I'm the Grandmaster. I love ties. Lord Deathman.
This is Sophie's choice right there. I'll take the poison, and I'm not going to choose between my. Yeah, these are. These are just two completely amazing films, and in very different ways. So I'm going to go with the tie. They're both that strong.
Okay. Yeah. Well. Now I'm on the spot all of a sudden. Now, you know
there you
what?
go.
Come at me. The Undiscovered Country is number one for me.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. So
A bold choice.
well, you can say it's a bold choice, but I won't lift the head. Anyway, it's time to do a rating for Star Trek 6: The Undiscovered Country. Lord Deathman, I'll let you go first.
Yep, I think obviously this is going to be a 10 out of 10 for me. It's nearly a flawless execution in the franchise. I also want to take a moment to just talk to my brothers and sisters in fandom. If you are a Discovery fan, I want you to take what we said early on in terms of what might be going on with that series with just a little bit of hope. Hang in there with us because we are going to be reviewing Discovery at some point, and I think Taylor and I and the other Star Trek fans on the panel will be able to give you some critical insight into why we feel that show might not stack up.
Well, we'll see about that. Taylor may not even want to join, or maybe he does want to join, but we'll see.
I want to join.
Disco fans, please stay with us. But,
yeah, Disco fans, please hang in there with us, please.
But I think it's only going to be in like 2027 or something, 2028 that we get to it. So maybe Taylor has been softened up on it already by then upon rewatch.
Probably before we get the third season of Rings of Power. So.
Oh yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Don't get me started on that. Taylor, what is your number for The Undiscovered Country?
Well, as you know, it's already 10 out of 10.
No.
I also want to point out that, of course, this movie came out in 1991, so Star Trek: The Next Generation had already been running for several years, and I really love that one of Worf's ancestors was the defense attorney in the Klingon trial for Captain Kirk. I thought that was really well played.
Yeah, well, I agree. Yeah, no surprise here. 10 out of 10 also for me. Even though Sulu is not in that final scene, but like I say, it feels more like a nitpick, but it's just like, it's not even a flaw, it's a regret I have. But I think it's a 10 out of 10. I absolutely love this movie. Like I said, to me, it's the best movie for the original cast. And maybe even the best Star Trek movie ever made. But we will get to that at a later point. And that will be in the coming months, maybe. We'll see, within a year or so. That will conclude this month's episode of the Star Trek Project and the part of the original series cast. But don't worry, we'll get back for you for the next generation. We hope you have enjoyed our discussion today. If you did, help us out. Like and share this review and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you really want more of us, join our forum. You can talk to us directly. We would love it if you do that. Just click on the description, on the link in the description below. In episode 11 of the Star Trek Project, we will be discussing Star Trek: The Next Generation Season 1. So join us again in a month. But before you do that, check out our other review series for The Rings of Power, Agatha All Along, The Penguin. And yes, in the coming days, there also will be a review for Joker Folie à Deux on the channel. So, lots to see, lots to click on. Please do. For now, I want to thank you all, also on behalf of our champions, and wish you to live long and prosper. Bye.